Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Prepare for a Summer of Scares. I'm Sarah Hunter, Books for Youth and Graphic Novels editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. A link to today's title list was included in the reminder email you received from Zoom an hour ago. To download it, please go to that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. You can also download the title list by clicking the URL on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble accessing this material, please email us at webinars@booklistonline.com. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. From there, you can select Show or Hide Subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Caption Settings. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We have a fantastic program for you today, and we'll begin with a brief introduction from our panelists about their new books. We'll begin with Kiersten White, author of Haunted Holiday. Kiersten has never been a lifeguard, camp counselor, or spa masseuse, but she is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than 20 books, including Wretched Water Park, the first book in the Sinister Summer series, and Beanstalker and Other Hilarious Scary Tales. She lives with her family near the beach and keeps all her secrets safely buried in her backyard, where they are guarded by a ferocious tortoise named Kimberly. Thank you for being here, Kiersten. Tell us about Haunted Holiday.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to do this. Middle grade is my whole heart, so I've been really looking forward to this. Just as a brief introduction, Haunted Holiday is actually book 5 in a 5-book series. So we have Wretched Water Park, Vampiric Vacation, Camp Creepy, Menacing Manor, and Haunted Holiday. My copy editors are always like, was that alliteration intentional? And it's always intentional. I love alliteration. I also love scary stories. But when I was a kid, I was scared of everything. I had nightmares. I had a really, really active imagination. Shocking, I know. Uh, and so I really wanted to watch and read scary things, but it was too much for me. I used to sneak Goosebumps books to school and read them under the desk because it was daylight, so it was safe. Fear Street books were too scary for me, so I'd make my older sister read them and then tell me the entire plot so that I could be brave enough to read them. So there was this constant tension in me of wanting that aesthetic, right? Wanting the gothic, macabre, scary aesthetic, but not being able to handle that level of content. And I have a 10-year-old son now who is very similar. I call him my cherub goth. He loves spooky things, but he's also a very tender, sensitive child. And so the Sinister Summer series was my way of writing something for child me and also for my own child that had that spooky atmosphere, that mystery, that undercurrent of maybe something bad is happening while still being accessible and sweet and caring toward the readers. As my son put it when he was reading it, he said, "Mom, I like these books because every time I feel like they're getting too scary, it ends up being funny instead." And for me, that's the joy of middle grade because you can lean into that humor, you can lean into that absurdity, and you can make things genuinely scary because when you're a child moving through the world, you have so little say and control over what you're doing and the situations that you're put into. That's really scary. And we can lean into that in middle grade. But middle grade horror can also be really empowering in that we're saying to children, you might not be able to choose your circumstances, but you can choose how you move through them and you can choose how you engage with them and react to them. So it was really, really fun writing this series. I also write young adult and adult horror, and it was always nice getting to switch between very intense adult horror and then back to my funny, sweet, slightly spooky middle grade series. Haunted Holiday is the 5th book in the series. It was was such a dream. It was such a dream to write 5 books following the Sinister Winterbottom twins. Their names are Alexander and Theo Sinister Winterbottom, and they're dropped off to live with their mysterious aunt whom they've never met for the summer. And she takes them to increasingly bizarre summer vacation destinations where they're presented with mysteries and missing people and brainwashing and possibly vampires, all sorts of spooky things where they have to solve mysteries in each book, bringing them to the culmination where they figure out where their parents have been and why they've had such a strange and sinister summer. I really enjoy putting together these twins as the main characters. Alexander is very much inspired by myself as a child. He's extremely anxious. He's worried about everything from food safety protocols to the potential for sinkholes. And then Theo is the type of child who can't sit still, who maybe hasn't always done the best in school because of that. But she has so many strengths and she's so brave, bordering on reckless. And so putting together a very anxious child with a very let's go no matter what child was a really, really fun dynamic to explore in these books. And my hope, both as a writer and as a mother, is that kids who maybe typically don't see themselves as heroes in this type of book will see themselves in Alexander and Theo. And, if nothing else, they'll have a fun, spooky time and laugh a lot. These are my favorite books that I've ever written. I'm so excited to be here on this panel with these other amazing middle grade authors. Thank you so much for being here today, and I can't wait to chat more with you.
Thank you so much, Kiersten. Next up, we'll be joined by Amalie Howard, author of Bumps in the Night. Amalie is the USA Today and Publishers Weekly bestselling author of historical romance, including The Beast of Bestwick, The Raquel of Roth, and Always Be My Duchess, and has penned several critically acclaimed young adult novels. She is an AAPI Caribbean-born writer whose work has been featured in publications such as Entertainment Weekly and Oprah Daily. When she's not writing, she can usually be found reading, being the president of her one-woman Harley-Davidson motorcycle club, #Ride or Die, or power napping. She lives in Colorado with her family. Welcome, Amalie. Tell us about Bumps in the Night.
Hey everybody, thank you Booklist for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I echo everything Kiersten said about the value of middle grade and how wonderful it is to write for this age group. I'm here to talk about, first I'm going to talk about being the president of my one-woman Harley-Davidson club, which is awesome. I need everybody to know how awesome that is. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Bumps in the Night, which is my middle grade debut. Woo! This book is about a feisty young girl who is sent to her grandma's home in Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I grew up, for the summer for bad behavior. And she discovers while she's there that she is part of a trinity of witches, and she's being hunted by this devil who wants to unleash dark forces on the world. And on top of that, he's the one who's been keeping her missing mom prisoner. So she has to find her mom. She finds out she's a witch. She doesn't know what to do, but there's always like the friend group that comes in the clinch. So she makes friends with these new minders. They're like 4 elemental minders, and they have magic, and as well as a talking baby iguana who's PQ, and he's so cute and so like a little dragon, like all this dragon personality in this tiny little lizard. Anyway, they're all supposed to guide her to navigate a magical maze in a mystical silk cottonwood tree, which is a tree that's pretty supernatural in Trinidadian culture. In fact, my aunt had a tree in her yard, and people refused to go near it to cut it down just because there's so much mystery and like curses around it. Like if you harm it, you'll suffer bad luck. And it was really interesting. They couldn't get anybody because the roots were damaging their house, but it was just so fascinating to me. Anyway, so they're in this maze, and there's lots of puzzles and complicated obstacle courses and riddles. And she has to figure out how to, be friends with these minders. She doesn't know who to trust. There's another girl in there that's kind of jealous of her relationship with her grandma. And in all of that, it's a race against time to find her mom, fight this devil, and face off against all of these monsters that I grew up with, stories that I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, like Duans and it's spelled La Diablesse, which is French for the devil woman, but it's pronounced La Diablesse in Trinidadian culture. Anyway, so she's fighting all of these and trying to figure out who she is all in the middle of that. I was really excited to write it because, as a a reader myself, seeing myself on page is so important, especially for people who, and children who look like me. So I was really, really happy that Delacorte, took a chance on this book and me and, brought this story to the page. Thank you. I mean, my editor, Bria Reagan, and Wendy Loja, thank you. Anyway, that's me.
Thank you, Amalie. Our next introduction will come from Tehlor Kay Mejia, author of It Happened to Anna. Tehlor is a best-selling and award-winning author of young adult and middle-grade fiction. Their books include We Set the Dark on Fire, which received 6-starred reviews, Paula Santiago and the River of Tears, which is in development at Disney as a television series to be produced by Eva Longoria, and Sammy Espinosa's Last Review, their adult debut. Tehlor strives to create stories which showcase the importance of community, radical inclusion, and abolitionist values. They live with their child, partner, and 2 small dogs in their home state of Oregon. Thank you for being here, Tehlor. Tell us about It Happened to Anna.
Hey everybody, thank you so much to Booklist for having me and to all these other awesome panelists for being here. I got so caught up listening to Kiersten and Amalie that I was like, okay, I'm making a list of books to buy and kind of forgot that I was also here to talk about my book. So yeah, It Happened to Anna is my 5th middle grade novel, but it's my first true horror story. I, much like Kiersten, also grew up being terrified of absolutely everything, partially because my grandmother was fond of telling me folk tales of La Llorona and El Cucuy and some of the most truly horrifying things in the world at a very, very young age. So I explored horror fantasy a little bit in my first middle grade trilogy, but this is my first time going a little darker and creepier. I could only write this book with the lights on, and actually couldn't write it at all after 8 p.m. So it kind of freaked me out. But I also have the horror tolerance of maybe a 12-year-old. I have an 11-year-old kid who can handle scary stuff better than I can. This specific book, It Happened to Anna, is about a girl who's processing her grief over the death of her best friend. The catch being that her best friend was killed by a ghost that's been haunting Sadie since before she can remember. This is a jealous ghost that she can't hear or speak to, but it makes itself known every time she tries to get close to anyone. She gets cold chills, the lights malfunction, and worst of all, she just gets filled with this horrible creeping dread that makes her want to run away or crawl out of her skin. After the death of her best friend, her dad moves her to a new school, and she has promised herself that she will never make another friend, which was kind of the fatal mistake that led to her best friend Anna dying and Sadie being here at this new school by herself. But her resolve to never make another friend is kind of tested when she meets this cool new girl at her new school and kind of tests the waters with this ghost. And the ghost seems to approve of this new girl, or at least ignore their friendship. And so Mal, this new girl, becomes poised to be Anna's or Sadie's best friend ever, or to kill them both trying. This middle grade horror novel deals with themes of grief, toxic friendship, and bullying, and the way our big emotions can really get the better of us if we try to cope with them alone. So I like to think it's the kind of book that is scary and funny, but also can help kids process some of the deep emotions that really characterize being this age. I definitely echo what everyone else said about absolutely loving writing in middle grade. I've written young adult and adult, and it is my favorite genre by far to write in. So I am super excited. This book comes out August 6th from Delacorte, and yeah, super excited to be here and chat with everyone.
Thank you, Tehlor. Now we'll hear from our final panelist, Jennifer Killick, author of Dread Detention. Jennifer is the author of Dread Detention and other series for kids. She lives in Uxbridge in a house full of children, animals, and Lego. When she isn't busy mothering or stepmothering, which isn't often, she loves to read, write, and run as fast as she can. Welcome, Jennifer. Tell us about Dread Detention.
Hi, It's really, really lovely to be here. This is my first US event, so it's been really exciting, a little bit scary. I'm quite intimidated. All the other authors sound amazing and their books sound amazing. But I will tell you about mine. So Dread Detention is the first book in a middle grade horror comedy series. In the UK, there have actually been 5 of these, and the 6th one is coming out later this year. So I'm kind of a lot further on with these characters. So it's nice to go back to the start and talk about the gang in the first book. So the story is about Angelo, Hallie, Gustav, and Naira, and they are students. Sorry, it's really hard not to say everything in UK terms. They are students at Dreadwood Academy, and they have all been put into a detention. So the school in Dread Detention was based on my secondary school that I went to here, which was based in a really fancy old Victorian mansion building. The building is like super, super posh, and nobody that went there was posh, but the building was amazing. It had stained glass windows and like a moose's head on the wall and like creaky wooden staircases, and everybody thought it was haunted. So the characters here go to this school in this amazing old building, and they have all been given a Saturday detention. So in my school, we had different levels of detention depending on how bad you've been. So if you've just been a little bit bad, you got a lunchtime detention. If you did a medium bad thing, you got a Thursday after school detention. If you did something really bad, you got a Saturday detention, but that was like saved for the worst things. I never got one when I was at school because I was super, super shy. I didn't like drawing attention to myself. But my husband, who I met in year 7, he was really bad and he got loads. So he's told me all about them. So these characters have turned up at school on a Saturday for this detention, and they are thinking, oh my God, worst day ever. Nothing could be worse than this. But obviously, this being a horror story, they're going to find out things are going to get a lot worse. So they are let into the school by the school's caretaker. So the school has 2 caretakers, Mr. and Mrs. Latchett, who are an old couple. They live in a cottage next to the school. They look after the school building, the school grounds, and also the school keeps well-being animals as well. So it has pigs and chickens, and they look after them. So Mr. Latchett, the caretaker, lets them into the school, locks the gate behind them, and he keeps like whistling this old tune that Angelo can't quite put his finger on. But he, he's thinking, what is that? So Mr. Latchett is already being a little bit weird. They go to meet their teacher, Mr. Canton, who is overseeing the detention. They haven't been there long when they hear a terrible scream, realize one of the school's pigs has gone missing. When they go to look for the pig, their teacher also goes missing. Things spiral, and basically they very quickly realize that something has been growing underneath their school, and that thing wants to drag them all down to their deaths. So there's kind of inspiration of the game The Floor is Lava, where every time they step on the floor, they're in danger. But they also find out that they aren't there by chance. Each one of them made a bad choice at the beginning of the school year. They thought no one knew about it. They thought it was done and over with, but someone was watching, and that person has been planning revenge. So they kind of have to battle the monsters, but also try and work out why they're there, what the connection is. The 4 main characters, I love them so much. I can't tell you. So I've just finished writing the 6th book in the UK, and I just cried because I don't want to leave them. At the beginning of the first story, they're not friends with each other. They don't really know each other very well, but each of them kind of has their own struggles, their own secrets. Angelo, the main character, he's a bit of a loner. He comes from a very poor family. They struggle to pay the bills, to eat. One of the characters, Gus, he has a medical condition. He has a stoma, which is really important to me to represent that as well. And they basically have to learn to trust each other. And as, funnily enough, some of the other authors said, as a child, I was scared of absolutely everything as well. Actually, I still am scared of absolutely everything. And writing these horror stories, it allows me to kind of explore my own fears and push them, but I'm also like, I have to have everything turn out all right in the end. So it's really nice to be able to write middle grade horror and have that nice fun level of scare that's super creepy, but then bring it back with a bit of laughter and a bit of humor, and hopefully a nice happy ending as well. I'm really excited to talk more to everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And now I'll invite all of our panelists to turn on their cameras and join us for our conversation. Hello, everyone. Let's talk about middle grade horror. What a fun topic. So, Jennifer, I would like to start with you. You have some really thrilling, terrifying, scary creatures in your book, and I'm wondering if you can talk about the inspiration for your monsters and how you approach bringing them to life.
Oh yes, I love making up the monsters. So in each of the Dread Detention books, there's a different monster, but they're all actually, terrifyingly enough, inspired by real creatures. So I really love watching science and nature documentaries about animals and the natural world. And there are so many just weird, terrifying, disgusting, amazing creatures that exist in the world anyway that you don't necessarily know about. And so everything I do is based on something real, which might be a bit upsetting for some people when they read the book, but obviously they get tweaked and made more nasty for the story. But yes, so Dread Detention, I mean, you can probably tell from the cover what the creature might be based on. And that started life when I saw a documentary about trapdoor spiders, who are these incredible creatures. They don't live on webs, they live under the ground, and they make a little lid roof for their tunnel, and then they wait to feel the vibrations. When something walks past, pop out their lid, grab it, drag it down, eat it. It's amazing. It's honestly amazing. And they're tiny and they don't hurt humans, but I thought, let's make them bigger. Let's give them some other stuff so that maybe they do hurt humans. So yeah, everything I do is based in reality, reassuringly enough.
There are some amazing expressions from the rest of you when she was describing the
I'm glad I write about ghosts now. Like, ghosts are tame compared to that.
Spiders are nope. Oh,
thank you.
I am scared of spiders
Oh,
myself, and actually it really helped me right when I was writing it. I'm less scared of them now, not like these spiders, but the book spiders, but actual real spiders I'm less scared of now. If that
There's
helps,
something on the counter behind you.
Yeah, don't look.
Just kidding.
I wanted to ask you about it because like the spiders in the book are incredibly detailed, and you include some really fascinating features on the spiders. And my dad is a little bit of a spider guy. Like, he loves spiders and like went to school to study spiders. So I know about some of the science-y spider features that you included in the book. And you already talked about watching nature documentaries, but like what else went into those choices? It's just so fascinating to me.
So fun, it's gonna all sound very, very strange. My husband, who I met in year 7, which is, oh my goodness, sorry, year 7 here is something completely different to what you have. At the start of secondary school, high school, I met my husband at the same age as the characters are in this book, so like 12. He is actually a lot like Angelo, who's the main character in the story, who knows everything about animals in the natural world. Just it's something that he was always fascinated with. So he often will just throw some freaky little animal horror fact out at me every now and again. Oh, this happens. And I'd be like, what? That's not real. He's like, yeah, look it up. And I'd be like, okay. And I'll look it up. I'm like, geez, okay. So yeah, I get a lot of inspiration from him. And yeah, like, so with the spiders, obviously they're shooting out the hairs out of their abdomens. There are spiders that do that. So that was a really fun thing to add in. Yeah, and it's been very fun creating these monsters.
I think we might be safe to be done with spider talk for now. What do you think?
I'm gonna have to leave, but you guys just call me.
I mean, I say that, but Amalie, you also have a spider in your book.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I do.
I thought we were
gross though.
together.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no. And
We
my
don't have to
spiders
talk
come
about
down
it.
webs to like eat them. So yep.
So Kiersten and Amalie, both of your books draw on like iconic fixtures of scary stories. Can you talk about what it's like working with existing stories or folktales in your horror and how that sort of shaped your approach to your books? Amalie, would you like to go first?
Sure. So the title of the book definitely gives you an idea of what to expect. It's Bumps in the Night. So it's all the things and sounds that go bump in the night. And I think it's perfect because for younger kids, especially, it's about those eyes you imagine in the closet or the monsters under the bed. And I think that, scary stories are universal at this age. You know, most kids love a good jump scare. I have 3 kids also. They're a little older now, but I remember sitting and even watching movies with them or reading books, and we're like, wait for it, it's coming. You know it's coming. You know, and I remember sleeping with a nightlight just because I loved reading and hearing scary ghost stories, and then creeping into my parents' room because I was so scared. So the jump off point is the same, only we're exploring in Bumps in the Night different folklore, specifically from Trinidad and Tobago, like as I mentioned, where I grew up. So different cultures have varying takes on known monsters. For example, the Sukuyan, which appears in my book, is kind of like a vampire, only she's an old crone who drinks blood and then turns into a ball of flame. And how you catch her is like you throw a bag of rice and she has to count each one before she can, you know, hunt you down or hurt you. The Duans also are like mischievous, creepy, lost children with backwards turned feet. So it was nice to bring something new to the page, but still make it feel familiar, because at the end of the day, that's what stories do. They connect people. And I think magic is a universal language that most readers and children can relate to. I think that answered the question. At least I hope so. Like going from the familiar to something new and kind of merging that. And I had a lot of fun doing that.
Mm-hmm. Kiersten, how about you?
Yeah, so I didn't pull from anything that specific. Each book sort of has like a little flair of classic literature. So in this one, I people always like, where do you get your ideas? And this idea has the stupidest genesis ever. I I was on Twitter, which is how most really boring stories start. And I misread a headline as being about a Gothic water park. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like all of my dreams come true. Let me go to a Gothic water park. I want everything draped in shade. I want to wear all black, like neck to the floor. I want to carry a parasol instead of like slathering on sunscreen. That's not what the headline said. There's no Gothic water park. But I was like, I want there to be. And so I kind of like from that engineered this family who are steeped in the sinister. It's literally their name. And so the first book kind of references Gothic literature. There's a missing widow, there's a ghostly figure in a tower, all those sort of fun things. And then Vampiric Vacation obviously pulls a little bit from Dracula. Camp Creepy is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Menacing Manor is Frankenstein. And then book 5 is just kind of the culmination of everything. And I really had fun referencing these things because I'm like, you know, some kids will get them, most kids probably won't. But then later, when they read those classics or when they're exposed to them, they'll be like, wait a second, this is familiar. And I think that aspect of it is so fun. But also, I really wanted these books to work as read alouds in addition to independent readers. I've heard from a lot of parents who chose this as like their nightly read aloud with their 8-year-olds. And so there is also that aspect of, I know parents are going to be reading it and being like, wait a second, there's a suite in the Vampiric Hotel that's reserved for lawyers who are engineering land deals in Europe. Like, you know, just these sly
I laughed at that joke.
Yeah, kids are gonna get. But I wanted these books to work on a lot of levels. There's a lot of wordplay, there's a lot of humor, there's references to classic literature, but basically I wanted any reader coming to these, whether they're a 6-year-old being read aloud to by their parents, whether they're adults who have discovered middle grade is actually the best genre and like reading it, or, you know, 12-year-olds, there's something in there for everyone. And so it was really fun getting to weave in these references that, you know, maybe they'll get now, maybe they'll get in 20 years.
Cool. Tehlor, your book deals with big, serious feelings, as you mentioned in your introduction. And I'm wondering, what makes horror a good framework for exploring those emotions, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because what I remember most about being that age, like my characters are 12, so like being 12 was like how every problem and every feeling felt so big because it was like the first time you'd ever felt it. And also you're just getting into the age where you're like embarrassed by stuff. And so it's like you have these like huge feelings, but you've just kind of gotten the message that you shouldn't be like sharing them with everyone. And so it like it can feel really isolating, I think, like just to be alone with a big feeling. And that goes for, I think, like any feeling, like, oh, someone doesn't like me at school, or I'm afraid of public speaking, or like kind of run-of-the-mill, like normal middle school problems. But also, there are a lot of kids. I was a kid who was dealing with, you know, like trauma and like big stuff. And so I think what I wanted to do with this book and what I think horror is so good for in general is like being alone with a big internal feeling. It can feel like there's no way out of it, but with horror you can externalize the problems, and so it's like sometimes it feels easier to like defeat a scary ghost at a creepy well with like a ritual than it does to just like sit in your room and feel your big feelings. And so I think just being able to kind of like create the metaphor of the ghost for the big feeling of like the trauma that she's gone through was a cool way to be like, hey, you can tackle this, but you're not going to beat the ghost by yourself. And so also you're probably not going to deal with your big feeling that's weighing you down yourself. So kind of basically all my books have this theme of like, without community, we can't accomplish the things we want to accomplish. And so a lot of the book is her feeling alone with these feelings and then being able to be like, wait, if I share this, if I externalize this, then there's a way through it. And I think horror is so cool for coming up with like amazing externalizations of problems that like if you described the feeling it wouldn't be a book, but a ghost is fun. So and much more easily defeatable than a sad feeling, I think.
I'm seeing so many nodding heads right now from the rest of you about this. Do you have thoughts about this question too?
Yeah, I think Tehlor nailed it. Kids have big feelings, and a lot of times they don't know how to engage with those feelings or even express them. And I feel like fiction is such a powerful tool for making kids feel seen, giving kids coping tools, but also allowing kids, like Tehlor said, to experience those big feelings in a safe and contained way. And I think that's why a lot of children, even like children that might not, fit what we think of as kids who like scary stories, are drawn to these things because it is a safe way to access and experience those big feelings, and there's a conclusion and there's a way to solve it. But I think Tehlor has been so thoughtful in the way that they have presented those in their book, because there is a recognition that kids often deal with very big, very scary things that they don't have the tools to deal with. And so as writers, we care so much about this audience, and we do try to layer in those messages of talking to other people, bringing other people in depending on your community. In my books I really emphasize, just because your brain doesn't work the way that other kids' brains work doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It just means that you need to figure out how to work with your own brain instead of treating it like an adversary. Those types of things. And yeah, I love that people like Tehlor are writing middle grade, because we care so much, but also we want these to be like fun, exciting, scary reads, but not just that. Yeah.
I was thinking about that also in relation to your book, Amalie, because your character literally goes through a maze to find her mother, and there's a big like wound of missing her mother in the beginning of the book. Did you think about that too when you were writing yours?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Tehlor said about the whole big feeling and the metaphor of it too, because if you look at like kids who have like, say, an eating disorder, even, one of my middle son is neurodivergent and he has depression, and you're walking around with this cloud, sometimes it's so much easier to slay a monster on the outside than it is to slay a monster on the inside. And, with Zerika and her missing mom, you're right, it is a wound, it's gaping, it's open, she doesn't know how to handle it, so she acts out instead of trying to figure out, because I mean, this age is, you're very young, you're trying to figure out who you are and what you have to offer the world and what people, especially friends or teachers or parents or even siblings, expect of you. And it can seem insurmountable. And I think sometimes even with a maze, something as simple as a maze or going through, this magical tree, it's like steps. So it's like literally telling you, take it in little chunks, little bites. How do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. I think that was it. It was elephant, a whale, Shel Silverstein. I think that's who it was, poem.
Jennifer, how about you? Do you have thoughts on this as well?
Oh yeah, sorry, I keep muting myself because it's evening here and my children are just screaming around the house.
I feel like that would actually be appropriate right now.
Just everything everybody else has said, like, just, oh, it's so lovely to hear, because exactly how I feel. I mean, I guess I write my stories to be first and foremost like a fun read. I want someone to put the book down when they finish reading it and go, oh my God, I just had the best time on that adventure. But you try and put so much else in there. And I think for me, it's really important. I just want every child to know that they are worth something, because even when I was a child, I'd never really fit in. I was always painfully shy and lonely. And even when I had friends, I always felt like I was the one on the periphery, that they all probably didn't really care if I was there or not. And that's really hard. So with my books, I do always kind of try to create also a group of characters that when people read the books, hopefully they kind of feel like they're hanging out with friends. And hopefully these characters, they see, there are people with all different sorts of problems, all different sorts of challenges, but they're all brilliant people. And I just want, every child to know that they're worth so very much, even when, they don't feel like they are.
Yeah. Great answers. Really great answers. Who knew that writing horror would be so very sensitive? I mean, all of you are coming at this with like really like thoughtful, caring intentions, and you're writing really scary books for kids.
I mean, I did have some fart jokes in there. I'm not gonna lie.
You have to.
That's how you reel them in.
Come for the fart jokes, stay for the trauma processing. It's a whole
Exactly.
So Amalie and Kiersten, I want to turn this back over to you. We've been talking a lot about middle grade, but I know, Kiersten, you're in book 5 of your series, but the Water Park book 1 was your middle grade debut, and Amalie, this is also your middle grade debut. And I'm wondering whether, like, how the transition from writing for older readers to younger readers has gone.
Yeah, I actually started out writing middle grade. My very first book that I wrote so long ago, I started writing it right after I graduated from college, was middle grade. And it was so bad. It was really, really bad. And I really wanted to be a middle grade writer, but then this little book came out called Twilight, and I read that and I was like, I could do that. And so I started writing YA, because YA is much easier to write than middle grade, and adult is much easier to write than middle grade. I actually think, aside from picture books, middle grade is the hardest age group to write for, because it's such a balance, right, of storytelling and accessibility and pacing and voice. I think it is the hardest to write. So it took me a really long time to settle on a middle grade voice and also have the confidence that I was ready to write it. That being said, it's my absolute favorite to write. I would have made this series 12 books long if I could have. Like, it's just going from writing YA or adult horror, where things are heavy and the questions that you're asking are very, very heavy questions, and then getting to write absurdity and humor and just have fun with it, because I really do feel like horror and humor are two sides of the same coin, right? You're taking the familiar and you're twisting it into the unfamiliar, whether that's in a threatening way or whether that's in an absurd way. That depends on whether it's funny or scary. And so getting to write these books was like such a joy. I never was like, oh no, I have deadlines. I'm like, oh, I get to work on the Sinister Winter Bottoms again. I miss them so much, having finished the 5th book. But yeah, I just really feel like, for me personally, there's so much joy in writing middle grade and getting to be playful and getting to be absurd. And most importantly, never ever having to describe the feeling of being attracted to someone. Because, oh my gosh, like, they were attractive, the main character was attracted to them, can we just move on? But you didn't have to do that in middle grade, and it was so wonderful.
Amalie, how about you?
I'm not gonna lie, I loved revisiting my inner child and the girl who adored reading about magic and monsters with a flashlight under the covers. For me, the biggest focus in middle grade was about friendship and adventure, not being afraid to be yourself or ask for help or try new things, which are big milestones for kids this age. I said, as a mom of 3, I saw this developmentally with my own children. In YA, I started out in YA, then went to adult, and now did middle grade, which was, you know, kind of like all over the place. But like Kiersten, I also really enjoy writing for this age group. I think that, you know, writing YA, as a writer, you might explore similar themes of personal relationships and self-discovery. But for teens, these types of lessons usually have bigger, more wide-reaching consequences, especially when, you know, there's things like falling in love or emotionally fraught conflict comes into play. There's a lot more internalization and self-awareness, I think, in YA, whereas in middle grade, the reactions are more immediate. So it was a different sort of character build, you know, where you have to layer elements that middle grade readers can relate to and how they see the world. In general, probably less profanity, violence, and, you know, the sexual themes. Opposite to Kiersten, though, I did have a baby crush on Knox. I'm not gonna lie. That kid was cute. I would totally be like, hey, buddy.
Wanna go roller skating? Roller skating, like I just dated myself, I think. Now.
I love roller skating. It's come back.
Good. Okay, great.
So what makes writing middle grade scary stories so appealing for you? Like, what keeps you coming back to it? We've been talking a lot about middle grade, but like, what was the thing that brought you to it in the first place? It's a slightly different version of that question. Tehlor, can we start with you?
Yeah, I think partially it's like a little bit what I was talking about in my last answer of just like, I don't know if everyone feels this way, but I think a lot of like the problems that we have as adults, like teens and adults, are sort of just like evolved versions of problems we developed as children. So like a lot of like the threads of what's going on with us now can be traced back to this age group. And I feel like in a selfish way, it's like really healing for me to go back and like do that externalization and like monster defeating for myself a little bit, like, and I've noticed that it gives me such an interesting like perspective on my own childhood and like the stuff I've been through. But then also like as a parent too, I have now, when I started writing middle grade, my kid was 4 and now they're 11, and so it's like right in that age group, and I'm watching them just be so hungry for like guidance in a format that they don't think is cringe. like I want like, and when they read a book, they feel like they learned it themselves, you know, they're like, oh, I went and like my parents didn't tell me this and my teacher didn't tell me this, like I went and found this information out myself. And so of course they like can't do that with my books, but other kids can. So I think like this to me is the age where you really get to still like help kids navigate the world. And of course, like you want it to be an awesome story and a scary story and an entertaining story, and that all comes first. But I love to feel like I'm getting to help kids develop tools that I wish I had had the chance to develop. So I think like I've written in YA and adult, and it never has that same feeling of like direct connection. Like I feel like I'm like helping. I really love that feeling. So I think that's probably what keeps me coming back.
Jennifer, how about you?
Sorry. Yeah. So I think for me, I started off writing middle grade, but comedy, which seemed to kind of fit my natural voice. I loved writing comedy, but I do lots of school visits as an author. And every school I was going to, all the children, not all, a lot of the children were just desperate for scary stories. You know, you say, who likes funny stories? And they'd all go, yeah, I like funny stories. And then you go, who likes scary stories? Me, I like scary stories. And they were just desperate for it. And I think in the UK, we don't have very much horror for that age group. And you seem to have a lot more, which is amazing. We don't have that much. And there wasn't really anything around. When I wrote my first creepy book, so I just decided, right, I'm going to try writing a creepy book. It might turn out like horribly, because you know sometimes you write something and it turns out really bad, but I thought I'm going to give it a go because I know that kids want scary books. And I was thinking, you know, if I'm scrolling through Netflix for something to watch, I'm always drawn to the things with like a creepy premise, like that hook that's like, oh my God, so they can't fall asleep because something happens when they're asleep. So I thought I'm just going to try. So I tried writing a book, and I really liked it. My publisher liked it, but they were so scared to publish it. It was a real nervousness and like meetings about whether or not we could keep the bloody hand, or if the bloody hand had to go because it was just too much. So it was like a really big thing, but we did publish it. We kept the bloody hand, thank God. And you know, the kids loved it and it did really well. So I was just like, and it just, I don't know, it just felt like it really fit my voice to do. And obviously the humor came in anyway. I tried to do a like serious scary book and it didn't happen. The jokes came in, and then because kids just like reacted so well to it, and there were so many children that say, oh, I've never liked a book before, I don't like books not for me, reading's not for me, but this book, I really like this book, I want to know what's going to happen next, I want you to write another one. And I just thought, well, this is getting it's more kids reading, these children who don't see themselves as readers, who don't get all the benefits of reading. You know, if we write the kind of books that are going to engage them, then they are going to start reading, and then we can help and we can make the world a more beautiful, equal place, and everything's going to be brilliant. So I was like, okay, this is great. And you know, also they're so fun to write. It's just the most fun. The gross stuff, the creepy stuff, like, yeah, I just love it. So yeah, it's all very much a win-win for me. And I do quite often get asked if I will start writing old, like grown-ups books or YA books, and I wouldn't say that I would never do that, but I'm so happy writing what I'm writing now. It just, you know, it's magic. And when you connect with readers like that, it is just the most magical thing.
Yeah, wonderful. Kiersten and Amalie, I think you both talked a little bit about what keeps you coming back to middle grade, but do you have anything else you want to add that you haven't said already?
I just liked how I agree with Jennifer, how super fun it was. Like, and Kiersten said it too, where she was like, you're so happy to come to your deadline. That's rare. And I agree, I did feel like that. But I had so much fun with a sentient murderous maze. Like, it was just really cool, you know, to write about the obstacle course that's like a, and you know what I had fun with this book is writing the title headings. I don't know if any of you had fun with that, like, you know, where it says witches get stitches is one of the, like, you know, title headings, or like, you know, kid-shaped waffles, where like in the obstacle course they get smashed by like some moving piston like parts. So that was really, really fun to write. And then of course, like incorporating so much of Caribbean culture, from the food to the characters to the places to the mythology. Like I remember reading a fantasy when I was a kid, and my mouth was watering at some of the food descriptions. Like, you know, it was like a cookie that had a pocket of honey in it and it made this popping sound. And I was like, I would like that. So like, you know, I wanted my story like to be as visceral. Like, you need to go and try some macaroni pie or curried chicken, like right this minute. Yeah,
I would like that.
Yeah.
I would like that.
Yeah, I think similarly, writing middle grade for me just feels joyful. And part of it is that these books are fun and funny, and I get to be funny. I get to do a lot of wordplay. My favorite is when Theo, one of the main characters, she tends to be very reckless because she's so brave, and she decides that she can still be that way, but she needs to be wreckful instead of reckless. So you can still be brave, but put more thought into it. And I love that, you know, in middle grade, you can do that. You can make up words and kids will be like, yes, that makes sense. Wreckful is a perfect way to describe that. And you just move forward with it. Yeah. So for me, it's really just the joyfulness and the absurdity that you get to lean into in middle grade. It's fun. It's just fun.
So speaking more generally now, what is your favorite horror trope or kind of monster? Just like generally in scary stories.
I like
Jennifer,
vampires.
you like vampires, Amalie?
No, see, mortal enemies now.
What's your favorite, Tehlor?
Werewolf.
Werewolf?
Werewolf. Yeah.
Jennifer?
I love people being trapped in a place with a monster, whether it's like a giant shark or some kind of demon, just they're being trapped in a place with a thing for a short amount of time and disaster happens.
That's a good one. What about you, Kiersten?
I just like monsters as metaphor, right? So whatever the monster or the spooky thing is, they want it to act as a mirror. So for me, the creepiest book in the Sinister Summer series is Camp Creepy, where the monster is a camp where every kid fits in and every kid is happy and every kid wants to do the same thing and is totally cool with it. And like it was so creepy and it was so fun to write, because that to me is horrifying, right? This idea that kids can only be happy and good in the exact same ways. So yeah, like I'm here for every monster ever. I just love it when they're a reflection of um things that kids are going through in the real world.
You know
Mhm.
what's my least favorite horror trope? Dolls. I'm sorry.
No,
Nobody write
doll.
about those.
No, I
Dolls.
can't. I
I
can't.
love a creepy doll. I love creepy dolls. They're horrible. I do like taking, you know, really sweet, wholesome childhood cute things and making them horrific. I do quite
That's
I
probably
had-
why my kids like Five Nights at Freddy's. I was like, I'm not watching that.
I had fun doing ghosts in this book because ghosts are so like customizable. Like I feel like
Yes.
there's like ghost lore in every culture. There's every different type of ghost. There's like you can do any metaphor with a ghost. I'd never done like a true ghost story before, and I was like, there's so much here. Like you can do any ghost.
Mhm.
smart. I
I
have
like
never done
ghosts a lot.
ghosts, but now I'm thinking, ghosts.
It's fun. I recommend it.
So we've sort of been circling this question this whole time, but I'm going to ask it really directly this time. Why do you think it's important to give kids the opportunity to explore scary stories in books, specifically middle grade readers? Let's see. Amalie, could we start with you?
Okay. I think it's important because fear is a natural and very basic human emotion. There's a saying that I love that says fear is healthy, but panic is deadly. And I think knowing this could be a matter of survival in any scary situation. And scary stories offer an opportunity to recognize and face fear in a safe space. So I think to learn from the choices of characters you might identify with as a reader, to say, nope, I wouldn't do that. I'd never go into the shed with the chainsaws, you know. Stories can show how fear is, a healthy response to when we feel unsafe, or, show a kid how to handle danger. And I think most importantly, how to build resilience. And, last of all, especially for middle grade readers, I think stories also show us that we're not alone. And, a lot of us are facing some of the same challenges, like Tehlor mentioned before about the metaphor, and which I also said that I liked. I think it helps us to realize that we do have, and I think Tehlor also mentioned the community of this, that there's an entire community of other people who feel these big feelings, who face some of the ugliness that you might face in your own life. So I think, allowing kids to explore scary stories is smart. And again, I'm going back to everything Tehlor said, sorry. But like when you said the stuff that we were as adults, can trace back, that makes sense. So why not give them the tools now?
Mhm. Jennifer, how about you? Why is it important to give kids the opportunity to explore horror?
I'm gonna cheat and just say I totally echo everything Amalie just said. It's exactly like the world is a scary, really hard place to live in. And it's nice to give kids the opportunity to face fears and explore fears in a really the safest possible way, with a book that they can close, they can put to the side, they can hide under a pillow if they want to. And as Tehlor said, I think the same with me. I think a lot of the things that scare us later in life started when we were children. And I do find writing my scary stories, even though I have nightmares nearly every single night about Mrs. Latchett, who's one of the baddies in Dread Detention. She absolutely terrifies me. It really helps me to explore those fears, and because I can control it. And with them being so controlled, it's a nice, safe way for children to explore that. Sorry if you heard that. That's my youngest. Sorry. Explore their fears and face fears. Life is so tricky, and the world's not getting any less scary, is it? So I think it's really important that we give give kids these stories as young as they want them, to help them explore their own fears and face them in a safe way.
Kiersten, how about you?
I mean, I feel like it's been covered really well. I will just say too, it's funny that you mentioned nightmares, Jennifer, because I actually stopped having nightmares when I started writing scary things, because I think I retrained my brain to see those things as opportunities instead of, so I no longer, if I was having a dream about being pursued, I'd be like, well, this is an interesting narrative. Why are they chasing me? And I taught that trick to my child when he was also having nightmares. I was like, you can control your dreams, right? And it actually worked with 2 of my kids. Just telling them that they had a say in their dreams allowed them to lucid dream and to control those narratives. And I think that, you're telling kids you can access scary things and you can access big feelings and you can control how you engage with them. And books are a really safe way to do that.
All right, Tehlor, bring us home.
No pressure.
No pressure, yeah. I think what I think is so important about it, I'm always looking for ways, and I think the horror metaphor is such a cool way to do this, to appeal to kids who are having like a wide variety of experiences. So if you say like, this is a book about someone whose parents are getting divorced, like kids whose parents are getting divorced can relate to that. This is a book about a kid who's afraid of public speaking. Kids who are afraid of public speaking can relate to that. But if you have this big metaphor, it's like, this is a metaphor for fear, like the fear you're feeling or the angst you're feeling or the anger you're feeling, then every kid, no matter what the size their fear is, can relate to that and see a coping mechanism for moving through it. And I also think that books at this age are so often read like with friends or with parents or with teachers. And so getting to process those feelings with a safe adult or with a group is such a powerful way to see how sharing your fears and communicating about your fears and getting help with your fears can like really help you move through them. So yeah, those are my two big why horror is important. But yeah, just the metaphor, like having the big metaphor that any kid with any fear can relate to and help learn how to process, I think is like one of the most powerful things about it.
Yeah. One other thing I think you all sort of mentioned in your own way is that kids are the ones who are in control when they're reading a book, and they get to decide whether it's okay for them. And if it's not, then they can put it away. That's the nice thing about reading a book, is that like you get to drive the train and you get to decide if the train is going to stop and you're never going to get on it again, and that's okay.
And you also decide how much you imagine and how much you visualize, which with scary TV shows and movies, you don't get to choose what images are in your head.
Yeah.
Whereas with books, if you want to skim the scary part, you can.
Yeah, or I told my kid one time, just imagine it funny. If the book is too scary, imagine the ghost like with a booger in their nose or something. Like you get to make up what it looks like.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much to all of you. I think that's all the time we have today. This was a really fun conversation, super illuminating about middle grade and horror. I hope we answered some good questions for our listeners. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, title list, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. A huge thank you to our guests and to our sponsor, Random House Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.